The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Ava stepped out into a hallway so silent it almost felt holy. Marble floors, gold-trimmed sconces, walls lined with monochrome art that looked expensive but cold, like everything else about this building. At the end of the corridor, a man stood with his back to her, facing the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked Manhattan's skyline. She didn't need to see his face. She knew exactly who he was. Nathaniel Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. Ruthless, brilliant, untouchable, and the last person she ever thought she'd be forced to share a name with. The air grew heavier as she approached. Every step closer felt like a step further from the life she'd known. He turned slowly. Those steel blue eyes met hers with the same chill as the glass he stood behind. He looked exactly like she remembered. Tall, broad-shouldered, immaculately dressed in a charcoal gray suit that molded to his body like a second skin. Sharp jawline, the barest trace of stubble, and a gaze that had shattered more people than it ever softened. He didn't speak. Not at first. Just stared at her, as if measuring her, as if calculating the threat level of her existence. "You're late," he finally said. She clenched her jaw. "I wasn't aware I was on your schedule." "You are now." Ava folded her arms. "Let's get one thing straight. I don't know what game your legal team is playing, but I never signed any contract. I didn't marry you." Nathaniel's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Funny, because according to Nevada state law, you did." She blinked. "Nevada?" "Vegas, 2 years ago, after a rather expensive bottle of whiskey. Ring a bell?" "No," she said flatly. "I've never been to Vegas." His gaze darkened, but not with anger, with something else, something unreadable. "That's not what the footage says." He walked over to the desk in the center of the room and tapped a tablet. The screen lit up. Grainy security footage filled the frame. A woman laughing, his arm around her waist. A blurry kiss, a chapel, her face, his voice, a ceremony, a signature. She stared at it, stunned. Her knees weakened slightly, but she didn't let herself fall. That's not real. It has to be deepfake." "We verified the footage," he said, crossing his arms. "Biometric match, timestamp, location, witness signatures. It's real." Her pulse was thunder in her ears. "But why?" she whispered. "Why me?" He leaned in slightly. "That's what I've been trying to figure out. You disappear for 2 years and then suddenly reappear right as my company is about to finalize a merger, with your name on a legal marriage certificate that gives you voting power over my board." She froze. "What?" Nathaniel's smile was razor sharp. "Surprise, Mrs. Blackwood. You own 26% of my company now." Ava's fingers tightened at her sides. "There must be a mistake. I never asked for shares in your company. I don't want anything from you." Nathaniel arched a brow, his voice like ice over broken glass. "Intent doesn't matter in corporate law. Your name is on the marriage certificate. That gives you legal standing as my spouse, and due to a very particular clause in the Blackwood bylaws, equal authority in key decisions." "You're saying I have the power to vote on your board?" she asked, stunned. He leaned back against the desk, cool and composed. "Not just vote. You can block acquisitions, delay mergers, approve or reject new appointments. You're a problem." A slow, burning realization unfurled in her chest. "That's why you summoned me here." "To control the damage," he said simply. "And to make a deal." She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of deal?" Nathaniel stepped forward, close enough for her to see the flecks of silver in his eyes. "We make the marriage real, public, legal in every sense. You move into the penthouse. You attend events by my side. You smile for the cameras." Ava took a step back, shaking her head. "That's blackmail." "No, that's leverage." She stared at him, heart racing. "And if I refuse?" A beat of silence passed. Nathaniel's voice dropped to a low, dangerous murmur. Then I'll launch a PR campaign so ruthless it will paint you as a gold-digging imposter who tried to sabotage a billion-dollar empire. You'll never work again. You'll be erased." Ava's throat tightened. She hated him. Hated the coldness in his voice, the smug tilt of his jaw, the way he wielded power like a weapon. And yet, behind it all, there was something else. A flicker of something unspoken. Regret? Memory? She forced herself to stay calm. Why would you go through all this trouble? Why not just annul it? His jaw ticked. I can't. Not until after the merger. If the board senses instability, they'll strip me of control. I've worked too hard for this. Her voice was flat. So you want me to play the doting wife until it's convenient for you to cut me loose? Exactly. Her lips parted. And what do I get in return? Nathaniel held her gaze. You get to walk away when it's over with a clean name, $5 million, and no enemies. Silence. The kind that weighs heavy on skin. Ava turned toward the window, breathing in the view of the city. Cold glass against her palm. She should have walked out. She should have screamed. But all she said was, "When do I move in?" The car that arrived to pick Ava up was all tinted glass and silence. No driver dared speak. No music dared play. It felt less like a ride and more like a sentence being carried out. She sat in the back seat, her suitcase at her feet, her mind spiraling. $5 million, 1 year, and a contract she never remembered signing. What kind of woman marries a man like Nathaniel Blackwood and forgets? The buildings blurred past the window. She watched them flicker like memories she couldn't reach. Her reflection stared back. Strong jawline, hazel eyes that used to be bright, and lips pressed too tight for her own comfort. Ava hadn't planned to come back to New York. Not like this. Certainly not as a wife. But that name, Blackwood, it had haunted her long before she ever stepped into his office. And now, it was hers, stitched into her future like a scar. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath the Blackwood Tower, his tower, and she was met by a woman in black, clipboard in hand, smile razor sharp. "Miss Sinclair," the woman said, clearly trained in discretion. "Mr. Blackwood instructed me to escort you upstairs." "It's Mrs. Blackwood now," Ava muttered under her breath. The elevator whooshed upward, past steel and glass and silence. 60 floors, then 70, then 80. Until the doors opened into a space so vast and so immaculate that it felt almost sterile. The Blackwood penthouse. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a crystal chandelier that looked like it had never been touched, a sweeping staircase, and silence, again. Always silence. The assistant said, "Mr. Blackwood is in his office. He'll speak with you after your things are brought in. Your room is upstairs, first door on the left." Ava blinked. "My room?" The woman didn't flinch. Yes. So that's how it was going to be. A marriage for the press, a separate bed for reality. Typical. She walked slowly through the living room, dragging her suitcase behind her like a weight. Everything here screamed control, order, clean lines, untouched surfaces, and not a trace of warmth. Just like Nathaniel. Her footsteps echoed on the stairs. The bedroom was large, cold, and flawless. A king-sized bed with hospital corner sheets, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her size, a vanity that had never been used. It made her chest tighten. She sat on the edge of the bed, exhaled, and told herself not to cry. You can do this, Ava. You've survived worse. But then the door creaked open. She turned sharply. Nathaniel leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. He wasn't wearing a suit this time, just a black Henley and dark jeans, somehow more dangerous dressed down. "I wanted to make sure the room was to your liking," he said. She stood. "You mean my cell?" He didn't respond. His gaze wandered across her face, searching for something. She didn't flinch. "Dinner is at 7, he said finally. We'll need to discuss appearances, interviews, PR expectations." "So this is what marriage means to you?" she asked. "Schedules and image management?" Nathaniel's jaw tensed. "Marriage is a business, in our case, quite literally." She stepped forward, arms folded, chin tilted high. "Tell me something, Nathaniel. Do you treat all your employees this way? Or am I just special because I have your last name?" He stepped closer, too close. "You're special because you're unpredictable, and I don't like surprises." Ava refused to step back. "Well, get used to it. I'm not here to make your life easier." A flicker of amusement passed through his steel blue gaze. "That's the first honest thing you've said." He turned to leave. But just before the door closed, he paused. "You're not the only one with questions, Ava," he said, "so don't get too comfortable." And then he was gone, leaving her in silence, again. But something inside her had shifted. For the first time since the day began, Ava felt something more powerful than fear. She felt curiosity. And if she was going to survive this marriage, she'd need answers, starting with the one that haunted her most. Why did I marry him? And why does some part of me believe it wasn't a mistake? The dining room was so quiet, Ava could hear the ticking of the antique clock on the far wall. 7 p.m. sharp. The table was long enough to seat 20, but only 2 plates were set, one at each end. The distance between them felt intentional, strategic, almost mocking. She stood at the entrance for a moment, unsure of where to sit. Was she the wife in this game, or the pawn? Then he walked in. Nathaniel Blackwood, barely a wrinkle in his midnight blue suit. No tie tonight, just 2 buttons undone, just enough to reveal the hint of collarbone and tension. His eyes swept over her like a scanner. She had chosen a black silk dress that hugged her curves, a quiet rebellion against being underestimated. Her hair was pinned up, makeup minimal, expression unreadable. He gave her a nod. No compliment, no warmth, just cold civility. "You're punctual," he said. "I lived with a mother who burned dinner if you were late. It left a mark." He gestured to the seat at the far end. "Then let's not waste time." She sat. So did he. A butler, silent, stoic, nameless, served salmon over a bed of couscous, wine already poured. Not a word was exchanged until the servant disappeared behind the glass doors. Ava picked up her fork slowly. "Do all your meals feel like last rites?" Nathaniel didn't even flinch. "Just the ones with strangers." She raised a brow. "Interesting thing to call your wife." "You're not my wife. You're a headline." That stung, but she didn't let it show. "You must really trust me to invite me into your home, into your life, even if it's just for show." "I don't trust you. I monitor you," he said plainly, slicing his salmon with surgical precision. Ava set down her fork. "And what exactly are you monitoring?" He looked up. "Everything." The silence stretched like a live wire between them. "You think I came back to sabotage your company?" she said softly. His voice was colder and the wine. "Didn't you?" "No, but now that you've locked me in this gilded cage, I might reconsider." Something flickered in his eyes. Was it amusement? "You're playing a dangerous game," he warned. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. "So are you. You dragged me into a life I didn't ask for. You expect obedience, but you're not ready for pushback." "You think I'm not?" His tone darkened. "I think you're used to being feared," she said, chin lifting, "but not understood. And that terrifies you." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. The wine glass in his hand didn't tremble, but the temperature in the room dropped a degree. "No one understands me," he said. "Not even you." Ava held his gaze. Maybe not yet. A pause. A dangerous, fragile pause. Then, "You'll accompany me to the charity gala Friday night," he said abruptly. "We need to be photographed together, interviewed. You'll need a new dress. So now I'm your escort? You're my wife. Act like it." She stood from the table, heart pounding. And if I don't? He leaned back in his chair, lips curving into a slow, warning smile. Then, I'll remind you what's at stake. She walked out before she said something she couldn't take back. Later that night, Ava stood in front of the full-length mirror in the penthouse bedroom. She wasn't just a woman thrown into chaos. She was a survivor. If Nathaniel Blackwood thought she would break under the weight of his world, he had no idea who she truly was. He might control the game, but she was done playing by his rules. The invitation arrived the next morning, wrapped in a black velvet envelope with gold foil letters, the kind of elegance reserved for the ultra-elite. Blackwood Foundation Gala, an evening of legacy and power. Ava stared at it like it might bite. Nathaniel hadn't mentioned it again after dinner, but the message was clear. Be ready. Be perfect. Be his. Downstairs, she found a garment bag hanging outside her room. Inside, a designer gown, crimson silk, high slit, open back, made to turn heads and provoke whispers. She hated that he knew her size. She hated more that it fit like sin. By the time Friday night arrived, she was a slow explosion in heels. Her long hair framed her face in soft, tumbling waves. Lips painted a bold red. The moment she descended the grand staircase, she found Nathaniel waiting. He paused mid-step when he saw her. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Not cold, not guarded, hungry. But just as quickly, the expression vanished. "You clean up well," she said coolly, eyes tracing the perfect lines of his tailored black tux. "You're a walking scandal," he replied, offering his arm. "Isn't that what you hired me for?" He didn't smile, but his silence said everything. The gala was held in a ballroom carved out of another century. Gilded arches, chandelier light dancing across crystal, and a sea of New York's wealthiest wrapped in couture and politics. The moment they stepped in, camera flashes erupted. Nathaniel's hands settled on the small of her back, proprietary and practiced. He smiled for the world like he hadn't threatened to ruin her life a week ago. Ava matched him, smile for smile. They danced, they drank champagne, they played the perfect couple. And beneath the surface, the tension twisted tighter. "Is it always like this?" Ava asked between fake toasts and shallow conversations. Nathaniel leaned down, lips near her ear. "Only when I'm lying." "Are you lying now?" He pulled back slowly. "Always." Their eyes locked, something dark and magnetic between them. Later, a reporter cornered them near the champagne fountain. "Mr. Blackwood," the woman cooed, mic gleaming, "tell us, how did you and Ava meet? It must have been quite a love story." A beat of silence. Ava was about to speak when Nathaniel took her hand in his, lifted it gently to his lips, and kissed it. "Vegas," he said, "stars, whiskey, and the one woman who didn't flinch when I told her my name." The crowd melted. Ava's heart didn't. But she played along. "I told him I preferred tequila." Laughter, cameras, magic. But when the lights dimmed and the charade ended, Nathaniel led her to a side hallway. Dark, marble, quiet. "You were good tonight," he said softly, almost convincing. "I meant every word," she said, voice sweet but sharp. "Especially the tequila part." He took a step closer. "Why did you come back, Ava?" "I didn't know I was gone." His eyes searched hers, a flash of something painful, like memory, like regret. "You could ruin me, you know. I haven't even started yet." The space between them charged, too close, too real. But then voices echoed down the corridor. The moment shattered. Nathaniel stepped back, the mask returning. "I'll send the car," he said. She didn't answer, just watched him disappear into the gold-lit crowd. That night, back at the penthouse, she couldn't sleep. Something about the way he looked at her, like he wasn't sure if she'd come to destroy him or save him. The city didn't sleep, but Ava did, barely. Morning light crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting across the pristine lines of the Blackwood penthouse. She sat at the breakfast bar in Nathaniel's oversized white shirt, her dress from last night folded neatly beside her, as if it had all been a dream, a hauntingly real one. Coffee in hand, she scrolled headlines on her phone. Blackwood and Sinclair, Vegas vows confirmed. The billionaire and the mystery bride. Who is Ava Sinclair? She hated it. Every picture captured her laughing, smiling, standing beside a man who barely looked at her when the cameras were gone. But what burned more was the way the world saw them as perfect. She had barely taken a sip of her coffee when Nathaniel walked in, suit jacket slung casually over his shoulder, still damp hair swept back from the shower. He didn't acknowledge her at first, just poured himself espresso like she wasn't there. "Morning," she said flatly. "Barely," he replied, eyes still on his cup. "We have an appointment." "With?" He slid a folder across the counter. "Family law firm. We'll be meeting with Blackwood Holdings legal team. They want to see us together." Ava opened the folder. Paperwork, contracts, clauses. "You do realize I still don't remember ever marrying you, right?" He met her eyes for the first time that morning. "That doesn't change the fact that you did." She stood, facing him fully. "It changes everything." A beat passed. Nathaniel exhaled through his nose. "We have a truth, Ava. Let's not break it over breakfast." She studied him. There were moments, fleeting, buried, when he looked like something more than just the ice-veined CEO the world revered, like something haunted him. But he buried it well. "Fine," she said, grabbing her bag. "But after today, I want answers." His brows rose. "Answers?" "Yes. Why you hate your father. Why there's a surveillance system in every room. Why you've built an empire like a fortress, but sleep with a gun in your nightstand." He was still, then cold. "That's not your concern." "I'm your wife, remember?" she said, stepping closer. "You made it my concern." His jaw ticked. "You're playing a dangerous game again." She smiled without warmth. "Maybe I like danger." The meeting was glass and concrete, Blackwood Holdings, Inc., with 6 lawyers, polished hardwood, and cold air conditioning. They sat side by side, hands never touching, but the tension between them tangible. The head attorney cleared his throat. "We just need to confirm that the marriage is legally recognized and that Mrs. Blackwood understands her voting rights in the company." Ava nodded slowly. "I understand." Nathaniel's expression was unreadable. As the meeting dragged on, her eyes flicked to a framed photograph on the office shelf. Nathaniel and a man who looked like him, older, colder. His father. And next to him, a woman she'd never seen before. Long chestnut hair, kind eyes. She felt her breath catch. There was something too familiar about her, too close. Later, as they rode the elevator back down, Ava finally spoke. "That woman in the photo, the one standing beside your father, who is she?" Nathaniel was silent.
"Then, she was my mother," he said quietly. "She died when I was 12. "I'm sorry," she said before she could stop herself. He didn't look at her. "Don't be." He didn't love her. He married her for power, just like me. Ava's heart beat a little too fast. When the elevator doors opened, she didn't follow him out right away. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure who she pitied more, the boy who lost his mother to a loveless empire, or the man trying to repeat it. Ava was still thinking about the photograph when she stepped back into the penthouse. The woman's soft smile, the way she stood beside Nathaniel's father, not close, but poised. Ava could tell, even in a still frame, that it had never been love. That photo wasn't a memory, it was a mask. Just like their marriage. That night, she wandered into the library Nathaniel never used. Wall-to-wall shelves, first editions, leather spines, dust on everything but the decanter of scotch, sitting like a trophy near the fireplace. She poured herself a glass and walked to the window. Manhattan's lights glimmered far below, distant, cold, unreachable. "Couldn't sleep either?" came a voice behind her. She turned sharply. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, shirt sleeves rolled, no tie, tension radiating from every step. There was something raw about him like this. Less CEO, more man. "Didn't realize this room was in use," she said. "It isn't, not usually." A beat. "I saw your mother's photo," she said. He nodded, walking past her to pour himself a drink. She was softer than this world allowed. "Do you remember her well?" He paused. "I remember how she smelled, vanilla and warm linen. She used to read to me at night, even when I said I was too old." Ava watched his face. His jaw was clenched, but his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "She died before she ever got to leave him," he said. "Your father." Nathaniel nodded. "Is that why you built all this? The company, the fortress, the silence?" He looked at her, eyes suddenly sharp. "I built this to never need anyone. And yet, here I am," she said quietly. He didn't smile, but he didn't argue either. She walked closer, the floor silent beneath her bare feet. "What happened to you, Nathaniel?" "I became who I had to be. No one chooses loneliness unless it's safer than the alternative." He looked at her for a long moment. "And what's your excuse?" She blinked. "Excuse me? You're not just playing the victim here. You came back to this city for a reason. You could have burned the contract and walked away, but you didn't." Her voice wavered. "I came back because I wanted answers." "No," he said. "You came back because you saw something in me, something you thought you could fix." She stared at him, her heart hammering. And then he stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You think I'm broken, Ava? I think you're bleeding under all that armor." A long silence passed. Then, "You should go to bed," he said softly. "The gala put you in the spotlight. Someone's going to come looking." Her eyes narrowed. "Who?" But Nathaniel didn't answer. Instead, he brushed past her, his cologne lingering in the air like a question she couldn't yet answer. She watched him go, and something twisted in her chest. Because in that moment, she realized something dangerous. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what she might feel if she got too close. It started with a knock on the penthouse door. Ava wasn't expecting anyone. Nathaniel was out for a board meeting, and the staff had already left for the day. She opened the door cautiously, her instincts prickling. And there he was, Liam. From another lifetime. From before the lies, before the contract, before the man with steel blue eyes and a fortress around his heart. He stood in the doorway, wearing that familiar crooked grin, still charming, still dangerous in his own way. "Still answering your own door, Sinclair? Fame hasn't changed you much."
Ava's heart stopped. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I came to see the bride," he said casually, stepping into the foyer before she could stop him. "Wanted to see if the papers were true." "Get out!" But Liam was already looking around, lips curling into a whistle. "So this is how the Blackwoods live. Sleek, soulless, just like Nate." She grabbed his arm. "I said, get out!" He stopped, gaze sharpening. "You disappeared, Ava. Vanished. No calls, no explanations. And then you show up married to him? You don't get to pretend none of it matters." She froze. Because once, long ago, Liam had mattered. Her almost. Her maybe someday. But someday never came, because reality did. "I don't owe you anything," she said, her voice a whisper of steel. He tilted his head. "Maybe not, but I know things, Ava, things Nathaniel wouldn't want you knowing, about the night in Vegas, about the contract, about his father." Her breath caught. "What are you talking about?" Liam's grin faded. "This marriage of yours, whatever you think it is, it's not what it looks like, and neither is he." Before she could ask more, the elevator dinged. Nathaniel stepped out, briefcase in hand, looking sharp and unreadable. The moment he saw Liam, his entire demeanor changed. Cold, tense, ready for war. "You have 3 seconds to leave," he said, his voice like a blade. Liam turned slowly. "Now that's a welcome. I was just catching up with your wife. She's not yours to catch up with. I wonder if she knows that." Ava stepped between them. "Stop it, both of you." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Ava, go upstairs." "No." The silence that followed was razor thin. Liam smirked. "You see? Not so easy to command when the doll starts thinking for herself." Nathaniel's eyes burned. "If you ever come near her again, I'll make sure you disappear for good." Liam took a step back, hands raised. Message received. But before leaving, he glanced back at Ava, eyes suddenly serious. "When you're ready to know the truth, come find me." Then he was gone, and Ava was left standing between 2 storms. Later that night, she found Nathaniel in the study. The room smelled like old paper and tension. She walked in, closed the door behind her. "You knew him?" Nathaniel didn't look up from the fireplace. "He worked for my father, then tried to blackmail the company. I buried the story." "And me?" she whispered. "What did you bury about me?" That made him turn. His eyes were tired, torn, human. "I've never lied to you, Ava." "No," she said bitterly. "You just withheld everything." He crossed the room in 2 strides. "He's manipulating you." "And you're not?" His hands hovered inches from hers. "I don't want to hurt you." "Then tell me the truth." A long silence. His eyes dropped. "I can't." And that, more than anything, felt like the deepest betrayal. She pulled away. Because secrets weren't just part of Nathaniel Blackwood's world. They were his religion. 3 days passed. Nathaniel had grown quieter, sharper. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy, electric, like a storm held back by glass. And Ava couldn't sleep, not because of Nathaniel, but because of Liam's words. The marriage isn't what it seems. Your contract wasn't a coincidence. He's hiding something about his father. She found herself replaying every moment since she returned to New York. Every glance, every order, every soft silence behind the glass walls of the penthouse. She needed answers. So she searched. Not his office, he was too careful for that, but the East Wing library, the one room she'd seen Nathaniel exit and lock behind him. One night, while he was out attending a private shareholders' dinner, Ava took a chance. She picked the lock. The room was pristine, barely touched. Files arranged by year, by company name. And then, a drawer marked Pre-Merger Sinclair Holdings. Her name. Her father's. She pulled it open and found papers that made her blood freeze. Contracts signed 2 years before Vegas. Details about Sinclair's failing assets, transfer options, merger clauses that named her as a clause, a bargaining chip, a line in fine print. She was the merger. Ava stumbled back. She didn't hear the door creak behind her, but she felt it when Nathaniel's presence filled the room. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice dangerously low. She turned, fury trembling through her. "You used me." "No," he said, jaw tight. "I protected you." She shoved the files toward him. "From what? A truth I had the right to know?" He stepped closer. "From a father who was going to sell you anyway. From a world that never intended to give you a choice." "You don't get to rewrite my story," she snapped. "You don't get to play savior when you signed the same deal." His voice lowered. "You think I'm proud of this? You think I wanted this life? You chose it." "I chose you," he roared, the words tearing out of him before he could stop them. Silence. Heavy, raw. Neither of them moved. Then, "You don't get to say that," she whispered, but her voice was shaking. "I signed the contract to keep you safe, And yes, I buried it, because the minute you found out, I knew you'd walk away." "I should," she said. "Then go." She turned to leave. But before her hand touched the doorknob, he said quietly, "Liam's not done. He's working with someone powerful, someone who wants to finish what my father started." Ava froze. Nathaniel's voice was low, almost a plea. "They don't want our marriage to end. They want it to collapse, publicly, violently. They want to destroy us both." She turned, slowly. "Why?" He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw not power, but fear. "Because they know I'm falling for you." Ava's breath caught. She didn't speak, couldn't, because for all her anger, all her fury, her heart was breaking in a way she hadn't expected. Because deep down, she was falling too. Nathaniel didn't say anything else that night. He left her standing in the library, shaken to the core, files still trembling in her hands. She stared at the door long after he was gone, heart hammering like it might break its way out of her chest. "Because they know I'm falling for you." She hadn't been ready for that, not from him, not when every look, every touch felt like it came wrapped in danger. But she didn't sleep, not because of what he said, because she believed him. The next morning, the penthouse was quiet, too quiet. Nathaniel's side of the bed was untouched. His jacket from the night before still hung on the back of a chair, and his phone was gone. Ava stood in the doorway of the study, chewing her lip. She hated this, hated not knowing. So she called down to the concierge. "I need a list of all visitors logged after 1 a.m. The voice on the other end hesitated. "I'm Mrs. Blackwood," she added flatly. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Private visitor, unregistered vehicle, arrived 2:12 a.m. She swallowed hard. And then, on impulse, she dialed Liam. The line rang. Once, twice. Voicemail. She didn't leave a message. She didn't need to. By noon, Nathaniel was still gone. She finally found herself pacing the hallway like a trapped animal. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls, flushed, uncertain, not the Ava who had returned to New York in control. Then the door opened. Nathaniel walked in. He looked different, disheveled, dirty, like he'd been in a fight with something bigger than himself and lost. "Ava," he said, his voice low. "What happened?" she demanded. "Where were you?" He didn't answer. She stormed toward him, gripping his arm. "Don't shut me out again." His eyes flicked to her hand, then back to her face. "I went to see my father." Ava froze. "You told me he was dead."
"I said he was out of my life," Nathaniel corrected, "not that he was in the ground." She stared at him, heart twisting. "Why?" "Because he's behind this. The attacks, the blackmail, Liam, everything. He's using our marriage to try and take the company back. He wants to ruin both of us." Ava stepped back, stunned. "Why me?" "Because you're the only thing I've ever protected." The words struck deep. He was trying to shield her, but from what? What does he want? He wants to expose our marriage as a sham. If he proves it was transactional, the board will remove me as CEO. And Liam? Liam was always his messenger, but now he's off-leash. Ava's mind reeled. She walked to the window, gripping the frame. "This is all too much, Nathaniel. This isn't a life. It's a trap." He came up behind her, his voice softer now. "Then let's break it." She turned slowly. "How?" "We go public," he said. "We make the marriage real." Ava stared at him. "You want to actually live as husband and wife?" He nodded. "At least for now. Long enough to stop them." Her pulse fluttered. "And after?" His jaw clenched. "After, you walk away, clean, with everything they tried to take." Her
her chest ached, because a part of her, a part she had buried, didn't want to walk away anymore. But she nodded, and so the lie deepened. They would fake a real marriage to prove a fake one wasn't. But what neither of them knew yet was that love was the one part neither of them had planned for. The first event was a charity gala. The press would be there, so would half the Blackwood board, Nathaniel's enemies in tuxedos and smiles sharp as knives. It was the perfect place to debut the happy couple. Ava hated every second of it. Not because she had to play a role, she'd done that her whole life, but because this time she wasn't sure it was a role anymore. Wear the red, Nathaniel had said that morning, so she did. Silk, backless, slit to the thigh, the kind of dress made for attention. His attention. When she walked into the foyer, he looked up from his phone and didn't blink for a full 3 seconds. "You said red," she said softly. "I didn't know it would be illegal to look away." That almost made her smile. Almost. The gala was in the upper ballroom of the Langston Hotel, old money elegance wrapped in gold filigree and soft jazz. Every camera turned when they walked in. Nathaniel's hand slid around her waist with practiced ease, but his fingers lingered too long, and Ava didn't step away. They posed for the press. They laughed at things that weren't funny. They danced once, just long enough for whispers to rise like perfume around them. Maybe the marriage isn't a sham after all. I haven't seen him look at anyone like that since. She's stunning and smart. She's not just a pretty face. But Ava felt it, the tension behind Nathaniel's every move, the watchful way his eyes scanned the room between smiles, the way his shoulders stiffened when an older man approached from across the floor. "Blackwood," the man said, offering a hand, still pretending to be a saint. "Dorian," Nathaniel said coldly, "didn't expect to see you here." Dorian looked at Ava next, and this must be the bride, or the asset. Hard to tell these days. Ava stepped closer to Nathaniel. "If you're done being disgusting, we'll be leaving now." Dorian's smirk faltered, and Nathaniel's fingers brushed her back, grateful. Outside, they didn't speak until the car door shut. The city rushed past them in neon streaks, and Ava exhaled slowly. "You knew he'd be there." Nathaniel didn't respond. "He worked for your father, didn't he?" His jaw clenched. "He still does." Ava folded her arms. "Is this how our lives will be now? Playing pretend while your past closes in around us?" His voice was quiet. "You were brilliant tonight." She blinked. "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's a confession." She turned to look at him, and he was already watching her. The city lights danced in his steel blue eyes, and for once they weren't guarded, just tired, and maybe a little in awe of her. "I didn't think I could do this," he admitted. "Let someone this close again." "Then don't let me in," she whispered. "Let me stay." His fingers grazed hers across the seat. And just like that, no kiss, no grand gesture, something shifted. It wasn't just a performance anymore. They were no longer pretending to belong to each other. They were pretending not to. The morning after the gala, Ava woke up in Nathaniel's bed. Not because they had crossed a line, at least not physically, but sometime after 2 a.m., in the thick of silence and unspoken truths, she had curled up on the opposite side of the king-sized mattress while he worked in silence beside her. He hadn't stopped her. He hadn't said a word. But when she opened her eyes, his side was empty, again. And that, more than anything, was starting to feel like a pattern. In the kitchen, the smell of coffee wafted through the air, but it wasn't Nathaniel standing by the espresso machine. It was Evelyn, his executive assistant, ice in a power suit, always precise, always watching. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood," she said without warmth. Ava blinked. "Is he out?" "He's at the downtown office. He asked me to give you these." She slid a thin black envelope across the marble island. Inside, 2 front-row tickets to the Wolf Foundation Gala. Another event, another public show, another chance to pretend they were something they were only now starting to become. "Tell him I'll be ready," Ava said.
But Evelyn didn't move. Her eyes narrowed, voice dropping a note. "Don't fall for him." Ava raised a brow. "Excuse me?" "I've worked for Nathaniel for 7 years. I've seen what he becomes when someone gets too close." "And what's that?" Ava asked coolly. Evelyn hesitated. "A man capable of shutting the whole world out, including you." Then she left. And Ava realized something chilling. Evelyn hadn't said it out of jealousy. She'd said it like a warning. Later that evening, the Wolf Foundation Gala was a different kind of battlefield. Sharper, colder. It was Damien Wolf's domain now, Nathaniel's rival, his reflection in all the wrong ways. Nathaniel and Ava arrived arm in arm, but his grip was tighter tonight. Not protective, possessive. Ava didn't mind, not yet, until she saw Damien. Tall, silver tie, smile like poison. "Ava Sinclair," he said with slow delight. "Or should I say Blackwood now?" She kept her tone cool. "Whichever name bothers you more." Damien laughed. "You've got fire. Careful though, that's how women get burned around here." Before Nathaniel could step in, Ava turned to him. "You always flirt with women your father tried to buy?" That got Damien to pause. Nathaniel's fingers brushed hers under the table later. "You didn't have to say that." "I know," she whispered. "I wanted to." Hours later, in the penthouse elevator, they stood in silence. Tension licked between them. When the doors opened, Nathaniel pulled off his tie, threw it onto the nearest chair, and turned to her. "I need to tell you something," he said. Ava's pulse quickened. "Then tell me." He stepped closer, inches away. "I can't protect you if you keep getting between me and them." "I'm not yours to protect," she whispered. "Not like that." He stared at her. Then he kissed her. Not soft, not slow, but like a fuse that had burned too long and finally reached the powder. Her hands were in his hair before she realized. His grip held her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. Every lie between them crumbled. And then, just as suddenly, it ended. He pulled back. "I'm sorry," he said, breathless. She looked up, lips parted. "I'm not." Ava didn't sleep that night. Not because of the kiss, but because of everything it undid.
The carefully crafted lies, the contract, the rules. Everything between them had been structured, measured, until he touched her like it meant something, and she kissed him back like it was the most honest thing she'd done in years. Nathaniel avoided her the next morning. Typical. He left a note on the counter. "Emergency meeting, back late, stay in." No signature, no emotion, just walls. Ava read it twice, then folded it with a tight jaw. Stay in? Not a chance. By noon, she was at a private cafe uptown, watching the door. Liam slid into the seat across from her. "You called," he said, stirring his espresso like this was just coffee between friends. "Should I be flattered or concerned?" "Both," Ava replied. She slid the photo across the table. It was from the Wolf Foundation's press release, a blurry but undeniable picture of Damien Wolf shaking hands with a man she hadn't seen in a decade. Senator Lucian Hart, her father. "I want to know why they're meeting," Ava said. Liam's smile vanished. "That's above my pay grade." "Then raise your price." He leaned in, eyes serious. "That man nearly sold you to settle his debts, Ava, and now you're married to the only man who ever stood in his way. So what are they planning?" "I don't know, but I can tell you this. It's about legacy, and you're standing right in the middle of it." When Ava returned to the penthouse, Nathaniel was already there, loosening his tie, sleeves rolled up, whiskey in hand. He looked exhausted and furious. "You went out," he said without looking at her. "You left a note," she replied, stepping into the room. "I told you to stay in." "You don't control me, Nathaniel." His gaze snapped to hers. "Then stop acting like I'm the enemy."
Then stop kissing me like I matter and leaving like I don't." The silence that followed was razor thin. He put down the glass, walked to her, and stood so close she felt the heat off his skin. "You do matter." She blinked. "Then why are we pretending this is all just business?" "Because if it's more, Ava," his voice dropped, "I won't survive it." And that broke her, because she realized something dangerous. Neither would she. Later that night, they sat on opposite sides of the bed again, but this time, not touching wasn't distance. It was restraint, because they both knew if they crossed that line again, there wouldn't be a way back, and maybe they didn't want one. Nathaniel had always been good at pretending. He could smile for the press, smirk through a negotiation, shake hands with men he hated, and still walk away the winner. But nothing prepared him for how hard it was to sit across from Ava and act like nothing had changed, because everything had. They met with the Blackwood board that morning, a formal review of the company's quarterly direction, but everyone knew the real reason they were called in: a leak. Someone had tipped the media that Nathaniel's marriage might not be what it seemed, that it was transactional, that it had terms, that it had been signed before Ava ever stepped foot in Vegas. Nathaniel's lawyer cleared his throat as he passed a file to the board. "All false. We have proof of a relationship prior to the wedding. Witnesses, statements, lies. Every one of them. But Ava played her part. She reached for Nathaniel's hand, smiled at the board, and spoke like the perfect CEO's wife. Our marriage may have started fast, but it became real the moment we decided to fight for it." The words felt real. Too real. After the meeting, they rode the elevator in silence. Ava finally said, "You knew this was coming." "Yes." "You should have told me." "I didn't want to give you one more reason to run." She turned to face him. "And now?" "I don't want to give you a reason to stay, if you'll regret it later." She stepped closer. "Stop assuming how I feel. You built this wall between us, Nathaniel, but I never asked for it."
His voice dropped. "What do you want from me?" "The truth." He looked at her, eyes unreadable. "I want you." That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't even touch. But something passed between them like static in the dark, the kind of tension that made every breath feel louder. He lingered in the doorway to her room, just watching. She didn't tell him to stay. She didn't tell him to go. And when she finally whispered, "Good night," he nodded, but he didn't leave. They talked. About nothing at first. Music, her childhood, his mother's garden in Vermont. Then, finally, the truth. "My father once told me that love was a liability," Nathaniel said, staring at the ceiling. "He was wrong," Ava replied quietly. "No, he was right. He just didn't understand that some liabilities are worth everything." It had been days since Ava last spoke to Liam, not because she didn't want to, but because she finally realized something. Liam was the past. Whatever they'd been, childhood, protection, loyalty, it was all built on an illusion of safety. Nathaniel was different. He wasn't safe, but he was real. That night, the power cut out at exactly 11:17 p.m., just as Ava stepped out of the bathroom, silk robe brushing her skin, hair damp from the shower. She paused in the hallway, watching shadows flicker along the walls. The penthouse, usually lit like a city from above, had turned into something else entirely. Something intimate. "Nathaniel?" she called. No answer. Then she heard the click of a lighter and the warm flicker of flame in the living room. He was there, sitting on the couch, shirt half unbuttoned, whiskey untouched. A dozen candles glowed around him. "You set the power out?" she asked, eyebrows raised. He looked up. "No, but I'm not complaining." She laughed softly, stepping closer. "You're staring." "I'm not sorry."
He stood, walked to her, and for once he didn't say anything clever. He just looked. "You used to hide your eyes," he murmured. "Now I can't stop looking at them." Ava's voice trembled, soft. "Maybe I was hiding from the wrong person." He touched her cheek, slowly, reverently, then leaned in. This kiss was nothing like the first. It wasn't fire. It was surrender. It was all the things they hadn't allowed themselves to feel crashing through at once. And when he picked her up, carried her to the bedroom, and closed the door behind them, nothing about it felt fake. Nothing about it felt like performance. After, they lay in silence, his hand on her waist, her fingers curled against his chest. And for once, Ava didn't feel like she was trapped in someone else's game. She felt chosen. "I want to end the contract," he said quietly. She tensed. "What?" "I don't want it to be a contract anymore. No rules, no deadlines, no escape clauses." Ava turned to him. "And what would it be instead?" Nathaniel's eyes met hers. Real. The call came at dawn. Liam's voice was clipped, urgent. "Ava, it's your father. He's about to make a move on Blackwood Global." She sat up, heartbeat suddenly sharp. What kind of move? A hostile buyout. Damian Wolf and Lucian Hart joined forces. They've been working behind the scenes for months. This was never just about you. Ava burst into Nathaniel's office minutes later. Still barefoot, still in his dress shirt from the night before. He looked up from the security footage like he hadn't slept in days. Because he hadn't. "I know," he said before she even spoke. "You knew and you didn't tell me?" she snapped. "I was trying to protect you." "No," she said, stepping forward. "You were trying to protect yourself from needing me." He stood, and for the first time since they met, he looked scared. "Everything I've done," he said, voice rough, "was to keep you from being pulled into my father's legacy. Damian, Lucian, the board, this was never just a company. It's a war. Then stop fighting alone."
Her voice broke. "You don't have to be like them. You don't have to lose yourself to win." Nathaniel stared at her, then walked to the locked drawer in his desk. He pulled out the original contract, the one that had bound them together. The fake marriage, the strategic terms, the lie. He handed it to her. "Burn it," he said. Ava blinked. "What?" "I don't want you because I'm cornered. I want you because I choose you." Her hands trembled as she lit the edge. They watched the paper curl, blacken, and disappear in ash. That night, the boardroom was full. All eyes on Nathaniel. Damian stood across the table, smug. "You've lost the majority vote. Walk away before it gets worse." Ava entered the room, in a fitted black dress, eyes blazing. And beside her, Liam, former rival, now ally. "Actually," she said, "I hold 50% of Hart Industries." Damian's smile vanished. "Lucian signed it over to me years ago as insurance," she added. "He just didn't know I'd ever use it." She placed the signed documents on the table. Liam grinned. Game over. The vote failed. Blackwood Global remained in Nathaniel's hands. And Damian Wolf? Finished. Later, as the sun rose, Ava stood on the rooftop with Nathaniel. Wind in her hair, city below them, silent. Until she asked softly, "What happens now?" Nathaniel slid a hand into hers. "Now we stop pretending." "You mean we get to be happy?" He smiled. For the first time, truly smiled. "I don't know what happy looks like, but I know it looks a lot like you."